Welcome to the CFFL podcast. Here is your host, Shipwrecks Crew.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the podcast today. Today we are going to go over the new division name, Proving Grounds. Matthew renamed this division as he was booted from Wall Street and is now in his new division with DP Hit Squad and D's Nuts. If you guys haven't seen the image, it's pretty sweet, and I like the name, and it's definitely an improvement over what it was before. Which one was it before? Was that what division was that called? Was
Vinegar Strokes.
Was it Vinegar Strokes that got taken over? Okay, Vinegar Strokes over. And I'm joined here by Matthew today, obviously, for the podcast today. But before we get into the keeper preview, really want to go over some absolutely huge changes that we recently made. We did a emergency fellowship meeting and talked about some big changes we wanted to do. So to get right into it, we were really concerned with the wide receiver position losing its value by quite a bit. If you saw, Matthew's roster, who won the championship last year with only two wide receivers on his roster almost the entire year. Not ideal for what we want to accomplish with our league. We want every position to have some sort of meaning. So we really thought about it, and we're implementing the 0.5 PPR this year. So half point PPR is going to be to our league this year. So big change there, really going to shake things up. But we didn't want to stop there, because if we just did 0.5 PPR for wide receivers, then all of a sudden it just kind of throws the other positions out of whack. So we came in and we decided that, you know what, we need to make big changes across all the positions to make sure everything's balanced. We don't want to overbalance wide receivers this year, come back next year, make a small change here, small change there. We just wanted to get it done. So what we've done is we've gone in and going back to the passing now. Passing, we're going to give quarterbacks 0.1 point for each completion that they make. So every completion, 0.1 point. So that's going to help balance out the quarterbacks with the other positions to go along with the 6 points per passing touchdown as well. So that's going to be really helpful. And then rushing, you're going to get 0.25 per carry. So that's going to help keep the running backs that run the ball most and maybe don't receive it as much. That's going to help them keep pace with those scat backs that get a lot of receptions. Wide receiving points, that is, receivers, running backs, and quarterbacks will receive 0.5 points per reception, but we're going to actually do 1 full point per reception for tight ends. So tight ends get a full point per reception. That's really going to boost their value. Really going to be interesting to see how that shakes those things up there. And then across all the positions, what we thought was important was adding something that our league was missing that is an important part of the actual game, and first downs. So we're going to give all positions 0.25 points per first down that they do, whether it's the quarterback throwing a pass, a running back running it, receiving it, doesn't matter, 0.25 for a first down. And then the last small change we did, we added to defenses. They added a new rule for us with our league this year where you can add fourth down stops. So if a team stops another team on fourth down, they're going to get the 2 points, much like a turnover that they get right now. I'll have all these points are going to be listed on the screen, so I'll summarize it here for you guys. But big changes to the league this year, really going to shake things up. What do you think about it, Matt?
Well, I'm really excited about the changes. At first, as he said in the last video, I was one of the ones that was hesitant to do the PPR. And that mainly was because I felt like it was going to overpower one of the positions, and that's the receivers. And I just don't... My team, personally, it benefits greatly from having the PPR because my running backs seem to catch a lot of passes. But I just didn't want every other running back or the traditional style running backs to suffer because we wanted to give the receivers some more points. But by balancing all the positions, I think it's the way to go, because you need to get points for what's important in the game, and what's important in the game necessarily isn't the catch, but it's what they did with the catch. And getting a first down it can change the tide of a game. It's not touchdowns aren't the only important thing.
Absolutely, and that's where standard leagues really kind of make their hay. The players that score the most touchdowns are often the players that are at the top of the leaderboards at the end of the season. The PPR makes it a little more balanced, not quite as touchdown driven. Touchdown's important, so I get that point. But with the receptions, it balances out the touchdowns a little bit while keeping everything else that's important to the real game, important to the fantasy game. And so I really like that. So really big changes, really excited about it. But let's get into the keeper preview. All right, so we are here for the keeper preview for the new division name, Proving Grounds, which consists of ... DP Hit Squad and D's Nuts. We're going to start it off with DP Hit Squad, so I'm going to run through his team here real quick. Aaron Rodgers in the 4th, Case Keenum in the 10th, Tevin Coleman in the 8th, Devonta Freeman in the 1st, Carlos Hyde in the 3rd, Jordy Nelson in the 1st, Devontae Parker in the 7th, Emmanuel Sanders in the 6th, Juju Smith-Schuster in the 10th, Sammy Watkins in the 5th, Cameron Brate in the 10th, Eric Ebron in the 10th, Cowboys defense, Lions defense in the 10th. So, Matthew, if you are Dave Fow here and you have this roster, who are you keeping?
Well, personally, if this was my roster, I'm hitting up everyone's cell phone trying to figure out who the hell I can get. And that's not a knock on him, but just a lot of his good players are really expensive. With not much production followed by them. Like someone like Devonta Freeman, yeah, he's pretty good, but at a first-round price, that's a little bit pricey for me. If he does not keep Devonta Freeman and puts him back in, most likely he will be picked in the first round anyways. But Absolutely. if I'm keeping someone, I'm keeping, with this roster, I'm keeping Aaron Rodgers in the 4th. Juju Smith-Schuster in the 10th is the obvious one for me. And then I'm probably keeping Devonta Freeman. There's other upside guys on there, but for the most part, those are the 3 that I would keep. I would consider Tevin Coleman in the 8th, considering the new format that we're running with the PPR, and who knows, his contract is up at the end of the year, and he might go to a team that can better utilize his skills. Or if Devonta Freeman goes down, he becomes very valuable.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an interesting roster, and I agree. I'd be going out and seeing if I could pick some people up. I know both your roster and my roster still have some pieces available if you're listening, Dave, which hopefully you are. But yeah, stuck with this roster here. I agree Juju Smith-Schuster is the slam dunk at a 10th round keeper value. I think he's going somewhere in the mid-range right now, like 5th, 6th round in redraft leagues. So absolute steal there.
Hard to beat that value.
Absolutely. And then after that, yeah, it's really you're making decisions on what you want to do. I mean, keeping a top-notch running back in Devonta Freeman is definitely, it's nice to be able to have that security blanket. But depending on where he ends up drafting, I guess that'll become whether or not he decides to keep him or not. Some people are kind of questioning Freeman. Maybe he's fallen off. He's a little guy, and he's had a lot of carries the last few years, and he's been successful, but maybe he's breaking down now. And then Aaron Rodgers in the 4th, best quarterback in fantasy. He's got to be hungry this year. You'd think 4th round, not bad value for Aaron Rodgers there. I really think Tevin Coleman's intriguing here with the 8th. Because if Freeman does go down, obviously he becomes an RB1 most likely in a good Falcons offense. But like you mentioned, Matt, it's important. His contract's expiring this year, so they drafted a rookie running back too, the Falcons, and so it really seems like Tevin Coleman's on his last year with the Falcons. Maybe Tevin Coleman's the next year's Jerick McKinnon. I mean, Jerick McKinnon, we saw him go from not much value whatsoever to all of a sudden skyrocketing in value.
He's being taken in a lot of redraft leagues in the 2nd or 3rd round, so that's quite a bit of value there.
Yeah, he's intriguing. Anyone else that intrigues you on this roster?
Not really, to be honest with you.
Not even my new boy, Sammy Watkins.
Oh, yeah.
In the fifth round for Sammy Watkins. I want to say he's going about there in redraft leagues, maybe like 6th, 7th round.
Yeah, if Sammy Watkins has the potential to be a number 1 receiver, but he's never actually realized that potential. Injuries and just an overall shitty offense has really hurt his chances to be the true number 1 receiver that everyone envisioned.
Well, let's see. He's played with Tyrod Taylor.
Garbage.
Jared Goff, who I think is overrated.
Overrated, I would agree.
And now he's playing with the GOAT, Patrick Mahomes. The absolute GOAT, best quarterback of all time. Sammy Watkins' value couldn't be any better. You got to keep Sammy Watkins here, Dave. Sammy Watkins and Patrick Mahomes going to light it up. Hall of Fame.
So does that Sammy Watkins being with the GOAT, air quotes, does he hurt Tyreek Hill's value?
No, this offense is going to light up the statistics this year. We're going to break all the records. Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, both top 5 wide receivers this year, with Travis Kelce being the number 1 tight end. Lock it up. You heard it here, folks, right here. First from me, definitely not a homer. This is just all factual information. These 3 guys are going to light it up this year. Chiefs offense going to explode.
So Chess was right in getting rid of Kareem Hunt then?
Debatable. I don't think so. He could have a great year too, Matt. I think all these guys could be top 5 at their position.
Yeah.
There's slight homerism there, but I do have high expectations in all fairness, all truthfulness. I do have high expectations for this Chiefs offense, but probably not wise keeping Sammy Watkins in the 5th.
So from Fantasyland back to Fantasyland and DP's hit squad. The thing I like the most about his roster outside of Juju Smith-Schuster is the fact that he's sitting there with 2 first-round picks. So from a trade he did with Sebastian,
yes.
Having those 2 first-round picks, it allows him to either keep Devonta Freeman or, depending on where he lands in the draft, he could
potentially has 2 first-round picks.
Yeah.
If he doesn't keep Freeman in the 1st, say he kept Coleman in the 8th, Rodgers in the 4th, Juju in the 10th, then he gets 2 first-round picks. Those could be potentially high. He's got Seb's and his, which I believe are both in the top, bottom 6 raffles. So those could be that's kind of intriguing once you actually stop and think about it.
And he should have the ability to get 2 difference makers there and maybe turn this roster around and be competitive.
Yeah, I mean, it could easily be like a Saquon Barkley and maybe one of these good running backs that aren't kept, or a wide receiver that's not kept. I know there's going to be some probably decent wide receivers not kept. Mike Evans, AJ Green off the top of my head. But yeah, that's pretty interesting there for his roster.
And maybe he can rebound from being the lowest scoring team we've ever had in our league's history.
That's impressive.
Let that sink in.
Well, let's move on to the next team then. D's Nuts. So let me run through his roster here real quick. Quarterback Ben Roethlisberger with a 9th. Matt Ryan with a 5th. Melvin Gordon with a 2nd. Christian McCaffrey with a 3rd. Lamar Miller with a 2nd. Doug Baldwin with a 3rd. Kelvin Benjamin in the 4th. Jarvis Landry in the 5th. Rashard Matthews in the 10th. Jimmy Graham in the 6th. Austin Hooper in the 10th. And then the Jaguars and Vikings defense in the 10th. Matt, what are you doing here if you're Mr. Washington?
Well, personally for me, I think the obvious choices are Gordon and McCaffrey in the 2nd and 3rd. With the switch to the PPR hybrid format, I think McCaffrey's value just more or less skyrocketed.
Yeah, I agree. I was kind of questioning him as a keeper in the 3rd, but with this change we did recently, seems like a slam dunk now.
Yeah, 80-plus catches, and he had 120-something targets last year. That's wide receiver 1 targets. And I think that he'll really be improved this year, especially since he's supposedly going to be getting a lot more carries. They said they want to get him up somewhere between 200 and 225 carries this year, which in our new system gives you 0.25 points per carry, which is really, really nice. Gordon is Gordon. He's considered in ADP. He's top 7 pick now, and getting him in the 2nd is a pretty good deal. For the 3rd one, that's kind of where I would look at his receivers more, as I'm not someone that would keep a defense or a tight end or a quarterback. But the Jaguars' defense there is what I think that he's going to end up going in the 10th round. I mean, they set all kinds of records last year, and they were in the top. I think they were number 6 in scoring in fantasy last year, which is really, really impressive. Not just across defense, but across overall. So will that stay the same? You never know. But they didn't lose anyone that's overly going to change their defensive scoring, I think.
Yeah, I think they may even added a piece or 2. But yeah, really good defense there. He has the Vikings defense too, due to stacked on defense.
Which is they're really good as well, and they only got better in the offseason. So Any other intriguing people that I see? Doug Baldwin in the third. If he hadn't just got injured, it would be a lot more intriguing for me. But he's one of the most underrated receivers in fantasy football. Well, in the NFL as well, to me. He just never seems to get love. He did get picked in the third round, but he performs like a top 10 receiver.
Yeah, he was like a number one wide receiver the last 2 years. I don't know about last year. He probably finished at least top like 16 last year.
And D's Nuts may have a little bit of love for him as he got him his one and only championship.
Yes, indeed. Forgot about that.
It really would be hard to get rid of him. But Landry in the fifth is also an interesting one to me.
Yeah, the switch to PPR makes that a much more competitive.
Yeah, Landry's a catch machine. He may not get all the yards, but he's going to catch a shitload of balls. So
yeah, and early reports have been that he's been just tearing up Browns defense. Well, I don't know if that says about Jarvis Landry, if he's a really good player, or if the Browns defense is crap. Maybe it's a little bit of both. But we'll see.
Tyrod Taylor did make the only season that Sammy Watkins had that was any good. He made Sammy Watkins relevant. So if he can do that for him, maybe he can do that for Landry as well.
I've always loved Landry as a player. He's really fun to watch. I think he's really good. He's a great route runner. Really good at making people miss after the play. I guess the knock on him is his long speed. He's just not a burner. But he's a really good football player. Always a favorite of mine. But I think I agree with you on the keepers here. Melvin Gordon, Christian McCaffrey. You got your two running backs there locked up pretty solid. And then, it just becomes what your preference is. Defenses, we just said it. Sixth best scoring position overall. It was sixth best. I can't even think of what the hell to say right now. I'll probably cut this part out real quick. But yeah, the Jaguars defense, the sixth overall last year. The defenses matter in our league, and so keeping a difference maker like that in the 10th, that's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, the Jaguars really did keep him relevant last year when his other pieces were struggling. He one of the things that he did do last year, these nuts, he did tie the second longest record for consecutive win streak. He had an eight game consecutive win streak in head-to-head, which was really impressive.
Nice.
He is also in the top 10 of the best records for head-to-head records for a season, which was 9-3. We had 3 people from last year be 9-3 and move into the top 10.
That's interesting that he's got a really good head-to-head record. But what was his? Do you happen to know his overall record off the top of your head? I don't know it off the top of my head. But his overall record, I don't think it was a ton of wins per se. So I wonder if he's winning just by slightly beating these teams that are mediocre. It'd be interesting to see the statistics on that. But anyway, moving on here. It's interesting with his draft picks. He's got a 1, a 2, and a 3, but no 4th, no 5th, and no 7th. And he's going to be using his 2nd and 3rd to keep Gordon and McCaffrey. So I guess that kind of eliminates Doug Baldwin when you sit down and actually look at it. So Jaguars D in the 10th, probably where he's going. That means he'll have a first-round pick. I don't believe he made the playoffs last year, so he'll be in the bottom 6.
No, he made the playoffs, yeah.
Oh, well, he squeaked in there.
He was in the wild card after I slayed him. I went
and moved on from there and won the championship on the back of Todd Gurley. Yes, we all know Matthew. We hear it all the time. Well, interesting roster there. It's got some good foundational pieces. McCaffrey got the boost with PPR. But both these first two teams, they have some intrigue with them, which when you first sit down and look at them, you wouldn't maybe necessarily see. But let's move on to the man himself, ... and his keeper situation here. Let me go through his team here first. Cam Newton in the 7th, Alex Smith in the 10th. Lock that one up. James Conner in the 10th, Leonard Fournette in the 3rd, Todd Gurley in the 2nd, Derrick Henry in the 6th, David Johnson in the 3rd because of his injury last year. He gets him in the 3rd instead of the 1st where he was actually drafted. Samaje Perine in the 10th, Jamal Williams in the 9th, Kyle Rudolph in the 10th, Chiefs defense in the 8th, and Panthers defense in the 10th. And those are the only players on his team because he's traded away most of them for draft capital, which I'll go over here real quick because it's interesting. So Matt has 3 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks, a 4th, and 2 5ths, off the top of the round. So no first-round pick, but he's going to have 2 seconds most likely because who I think Mr. Matthews going to be keeping is his boy Todd Gurley, who won him a championship. That's a lock with the second-round pick. I mean, that dude's going number 1 overall in most redraft leagues right now. So Todd Gurley in the second, amazing value. And let's continue the amazing value train with Leonard Fournette in the third. That dude's going back end of first, early second round of redraft, so he gets him here for a third-round pick. I believe he was like your 4th or 5th running back you drafted last year before you drafted any wide receivers. But Leonard Fournette in the third, great value there. And then you got to take David Johnson in the third, right? He's going in the top 4 or 5 picks in redraft right now. So just knock it out of the park, home run keepers here. You don't even have to really think about it. I mean, amazing value on all these guys. He's only going to be using up a 2 and his 2 3s, so he's going to have 2 second-round picks, a 4th and 2 5s to add to this roster here. Really interested to see. You got to attack wide receiver early, but who knows? Maybe he'll take another 2 running backs and roster 5 of them. He's trying to corner the market over here on the running back side of things. But yeah, I mean that's really it. Couple interesting pieces just to touch on. Derrick Henry in the 6th. With Jamal Williams in the 9th are interesting pieces if he didn't have such home run picks to go ahead before that. But yeah, I mean, just a really good roster, if not the best roster going in through the keepers, barring injuries, of course. But Matthew, why don't you sit here and gloat a little bit about your team? Are you on this? Are you keeping? Oh, I actually almost forgot. He almost has, by extension, a 4th keeper in a trade he did with Sebastian, with Allen Robinson. So Sebastian's keeping Allen Robinson as one of his keepers for a 6th-round pick because of his injury, but he has agreed to trade Allen Robinson to Matt after the draft. So Matt kind of, in a way, has 4 keepers here with Fournette, Gurley, David Johnson, and Allen Robinson. So, I mean, before the draft has even begun, he's got a pretty solid core here. What do you think about your core here, Matt?
Well, to be honest with you, I like it a lot. It would be stupid for me to sit here and just say, oh yeah, 2-time defending champ, probably going to happen again, TM. I think I like all my players, but granted, all 4 of those people have injury issues, so it's really worrisome for me because Fournette, I mean, he gets hurt every other day. Gurley, he didn't get hurt at all last year or his rookie year. He did come in late because of his injury in his senior season.
That was pretty much it, though. Gurley's been pretty damn healthy.
Yeah, he's been pretty healthy. And David Johnson, he did get hurt and miss all last year, but it wasn't really something that you can't come back from. It was just a dislocated wrist and some torn ligaments in your wrist.
That's it, guys.
No big deal. But it's not something like a torn ACL or an Achilles or anything like that that's going to slow him down or cause him to have any.
Yeah, you're not worried about long-term repercussions for that injury.
And granted, Johnson does go back down to round 1 next year, but I like having him for 1 more year, and maybe I can ride his back as I did the year before last when he got me my first championship. It's a very interesting combination of guys you have here. You have 2 guys that won you championships on your roster. And it's just going to be really interesting watching this roster unfold. I mean, David Johnson and Todd Gurley, with the amount of passes they fucking caught last year, now we have PPR also and first downs. I mean, one thing that rule is going to do, especially with the first downs, is these important pieces to these offenses are going to be boosted a little bit by that. So you're going to. There's something we wanted to do just to make sure we're separating the elite players from the average guys. But yeah, just an awesome roster here to look at, and it's kind of disgusting what you've been able to compile. Thanks a lot, Nick. Yeah. Yay!
But yeah, really good team here and then moving forward. If you're, like we said, Dave or some other people out there, you're still looking for pieces, Matthew.
I've got some.
He's got a couple more pieces.
530-559-6820. Text me.
That's on the internet now. Well, thanks a lot, guys, for joining us on the Proving Grounds Keeper Preview. Things are really starting to rev up here and are going to be starting real soon. In about 2 weeks, we have the draft lottery, and then things are just going to get crazier from there. But until the next pod, guys, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you for watching the CFFL podcast. The music for the intro and outro was the song Hero by the Foo Fighters.